All right. Well,
This
good
meeting is being
afternoon.
recorded.
Good afternoon. We are glad that you're here. Welcome to Charter Directors meeting for February. As I was saying, my daughter this morning woke up and said, Happy Valentine's Eve. So hopefully that is good news for you. If not, then happy February 13th. I'm glad that you're here, and we will get started with our directors meeting. So first, we have our director's report from Director Jennifer Lambert. So I will share my screen and turn the time over to her.
Thank you, Marie, and welcome everyone. Hopefully you weren't choking too much on the air. I understand it's supposed to clear out by tomorrow, hopefully, so keeping our fingers crossed. I know that I have two announcements. I don't know which one you have first, Marie. Oh, wonderful. So, Charter Employee of the Month. We are recognizing for the month of February, Jamie Lewis, and she was nominated by her board chair, Olivia Kirkham. And Olivia, it looks like you're also on, so that's wonderful. I'll have you, if you're willing to maybe share a couple of things about Jamie, but I don't know how many of you know the story, but Jamie took over just in a difficult transition for the school, but she has done such an amazing job. And she has been able to step into the role of the principal, and this is at Thomas Edison North, which is up in the Logan Cache area. And she just has great relationships with staff members and just the school in general, and she's been able to unify the school. She cares deeply about everyone. She's organized, forward-thinking, passionate. She just really has done an amazing job. And I know she's here. I'd like to turn it over a little bit to Olivia Kirkham and let you say a few thoughts of why you nominated her.
Thank you. I just was thinking about how difficult it is to be a new administrator in the first place, a new principal. And on top of that, being put in as the principal in the midst of a very difficult situation. And Jamie, I just am so impressed with her professionalism and her compassion and just the way that she's unified the school community and really taken on the role with, I mean, you never have no hiccups, but as few hiccups as possible. You know, people just love her, and they're so, they've just rallied around her to help her be successful, and she is a champion for them as well. So we're just really, really proud to have her and so thankful for her.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you. I'm really honored by this, but I have to say that our staff has been incredible. We really did not know what to expect with the beginning of the school year and some of the challenges we were facing, but they have been phenomenal. And I really appreciate a great staff and the support from so many at the state that have reached out and just really given us all they can. So thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And I know that a lot of times we all have a harder time in recognizing ourselves. We much rather, praise everyone else. But I hope you're able to take some time and just realize that you are appreciated. And thank you. Thank you for behalf of your students, your community. And I know it's a small thing, but we will also send you a certificate and an Amazon gift card, and hopefully you'll use it for yourself and not for yourself. But just congratulations and thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, then the next thing is also talking about a celebration. And this is going to be our second annual celebration. We started this last year, and we looked at the schools that were on the calendar to do the comprehensive review for that year. We do a comprehensive review once every 5 years. So we're not looking at all of the schools every single year. It's rotated around, and I just forgot the word. We celebrated 3 schools last year who just had some amazing data points, and we went to a bees game with them. And we're going to do the same thing again this year. Is we're going to, looking at the data, we're going to select a few schools that are doing just amazing. We'll invite them to join us at the Beaks game. But we also want to let you all know, and to save the date, June 8th is going to be kind of like a charter day at the Bees, where we're working with them. They're a great organization to work with, and to be able to make this a year that everyone can celebrate with their students, and being able to go to a game and have some fun. So just keep it on your radar. We'll be talking about it more in the future, but just want this to be at least the first taste of it. And I want to thank William for a good job on the flyer. I think it looks really good, so I cannot take credit for it. William, do you want to say anything additional for this?
Yes, I just wanted to say, so the Salt Lake Bees are really eager to work with us, and so they are going to make discounted tickets available for all the charter schools. That information will not be available until March, so they're going to get us the discounted code. We'll share that with all of you, but it'll be later in March that we have that information.
But we did want to get it on your calendar, and it's just an opportunity. We know it's a little hard because it's during the summer, but it can also be a way to have your incoming students and just kind of end and start a new school year. So that is all that I have. I know Marie will have some additional things in the in case you missed it section, but I'm going to turn it back to you, Marie.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Before we get to our
So no one else froze for me. Did Marie freeze for everyone else?
Did, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, unfortunately, let me see if Lisa, are you on? Do you know,
I'm here.
do you have what's up next on the agenda?
Unfortunately, I don't.
Okay,
So,
I believe it's Katie Hurst from Ed Direction to talk about the upcoming trainings.
that would make sense. That's what we normally do. So I'm going to turn it over to Katie, and then also if Shannon is on. So we'll go to Katie first and then Shannon, and we'll have you guys share about the trainings.
Perfect. Thanks so much. I'm going to share my screen for just a second. Super excited to be here with you guys today. Jennifer and Steve, I can see you. Are you guys seeing my screen?
Yes.
Love it. Yes. Thank you. So we just wanted to do a quick announcement and an update on charter seminars. I know you guys are all very familiar with them at this point, and just wanted to provide some insight. We have scheduled our next sessions coming up, but as a reminder before we share those dates, that we are focusing on increasing rigor this year, which is super exciting. And we've got some great teachers that have volunteered for us to come and observe their classrooms this year. So we've got some great instruction for you guys to be able to see and to share with your teachers. So on Thursday, March 23rd from 4 to 6 p.m., put it down on your books, make a calendar invite, tell the whole world about it, because we're going to be able to observe some fantastic teachers and then engage in some discussions with those teachers about how they went about their planning, how they brought their planning to life, and how they used formative assessments as well to follow up with that instruction with that. And then we'll have some time to just discuss in groups about what they've seen and what they can take back and apply into their own classrooms. And then we've also scheduled some office hours for Wednesday, April 12th and Tuesday, April 18th. So put those on your calendar, and we'll also remind you of those again in a little bit. And this will be just some time that the teachers can get on and ask some questions, kind of we can go through some action planning with them and help them figure out how it's going, bringing rigor to life in their classrooms. So we just wanted to put that plug in there that we're super excited for March 23rd to come, and to let you know we've got some great instruction for you guys to see, and to please share this out with your teachers. I'm going to pause there. Is there any questions, wonderings, comments, concerns about charter seminars that I can answer before I pass the buck on? Okay, well, back to you guys then.
Maria, it looks like you're back on. We're just going to have Shannon up next, but we just went on to the training updates.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Shannon, are you there?
There, yes. Do I have the opportunity to share my screen?
You should, yes.
Okay, let's look at that. So I have a list of upcoming trainings that we'll be providing. And let's see. Marie, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Let's go with that one. Okay. Okay, so we've got several trainings coming up, and we've adjusted some times, and hopefully that will allow for more of you to join us. But our admin lunch seminars, we've got 3 coming up in the next little over a month. The first one is behavior supports for students. Then we've got effective time management, and then recognizing implicit bias and how those biases affect what we do in our schools. All of those trainings are over Zoom, and that link we can provide for you if you don't already have it. Then we have 2 of our ACES classes in the month of February that are focused on special education highlights, and then also marketing and handling poor publicity with our schools. And then we've also added board training, specifically conducting director evaluations. A lot of boards have reached out asking about how that might be done. And since this is the season that kind of thing is happening, we have created a training specifically for that. And those invitations have gone out to boards and board chairs, but we wanted to make you aware of that. We also have mentors for boards, for administrative teams, for office staff, for counseling teams, and social workers. So if you're looking for mentoring assistance in your schools, in any of those categories, reach out. We'd be happy to connect you with somebody that might be of assistance to you in that way. And if there's a mentoring need that isn't listed there, reach out, let me know, and we'll see what we can do to assist you to provide the support that you need. Any questions on upcoming training? They will all be Zoom, and all of those links are listed on our website and in our emails, and I can provide it to you if that's something you haven't received up till now. But any questions on future trainings?
I have a question, Shannon.
Sure.
Do we reach out to you directly for those mentor requests?
Yes, if you'll do that.
No.
Yes, if you'll reach out over email, shannon@utahcharters.org, I'd be happy to make those connections for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, if there are no additional questions, then Marie, thank you for the opportunity for letting me share these trainings. Look forward to working with you all.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Well, our last announcement, we're actually going to do our in case you missed it right now. And then just as a quick overview for the rest of our meeting, a bunch of our charter school directors had reached out and requested if we could please have some training about truancy and absenteeism and how that works with the law and the 10-day rule and how that all fits in. And so we have a great training coming up today all about that and how that works at your school. And then we have an update coming this afternoon from the policy project. If you remember, that's the group that did the period project. And so if you have questions or concerns about how that has rolled out at your school, they'll be on to answer questions about that. And then they're also talking about the teen homelessness project that they are currently taking up and working on with the legislature as well. And then to end our afternoon, we have board member or vice chair, I should say, Cindy Phillips from the Utah State Charter School Board, and she will be here doing a training. The title of that training is Strategies for Supporting Teachers in Your School, How to Make Next Year Better. And so lots of great tips and advice on that as far as how to support the teachers and the educators in your school. And so that's what we have coming up today. And we are excited to get to those topics. So we will do our In Case You Missed It right now. Let me share my screen. And as I was going through and gathering all the In Case You Missed It news, it became very apparent there was not a lot going on. And I realized this is indicative that it must be legislative session. Things are kind of quiet because everybody's up at the Capitol working on things up there. So from USBE, we just had 3 things to kind of make sure we're on your radar. They sent out an announcement about the 2023 required climate survey. So making sure that's on your radar. There is a webinar that is coming up in just a few weeks, February 23rd from 2 to 4. So if you want some guidance or a refresher about that, there is that webinar. The webinar is optional, so you don't have to attend that. But the survey itself is required. That opens March 13th and runs through May 5th. So making sure that that is on your radar. That webinar is optional. If you have questions, Willie Chen is who you would want to contact about that. The second thing from USBE is that a Section 504 paraeducator manual was sent out. That one was sent a few different times as it seemed like the link wasn't working and then it was like a wrong link. So making sure that you've got the right one that has the link that is the correct link. And it's really just for reference and use for your Section 504 paraeducators. If you need that again with the correct link, or you're not sure if you have that one, you can reach out to Holly Bell, or of course, any of us, we can make sure that you have that email. We're happy to resend that your way. And then the last one from USBE was just making sure that you saw the Utah School Behavioral Health Toolkit. That was published in September of 2022. And what they were sending now was that some webinars have started. And those webinars go over information from the Behavioral Health Toolkit, as well as tips and strategies from each of the 5 stages. Rhett was announcing that the first one began and then there would be more webinars coming. So it was like a little teaser, like stay tuned, more webinars are on the way. So you haven't missed a lot. Just one webinar has occurred. I'm assuming it was recorded, but I can't verify that yet. So if you need to get in touch on that, Rhett Larson would be your contact at USBE. If you need that toolkit or want to check if there was a recording of that webinar. This one came from our friends over with Full Day Kindergarten. They are having a Valentine's Day on the Hill. So if that's something that you or your parents at your school might be interested in, this is just an event they're doing on Wednesday from 10 to noon. They're trying to spread the love at the Capitol and making some Valentines for the legislators to help ask about making sure that families have choice to opt into full day kindergarten. So again, if that's something you're interested in, that event is happening on Wednesday. And then last but not least, from the State Charter School Board, the State Charter School Board had their regularly scheduled February meeting just last week. Some exciting things that happened at that board meeting. Wallace Stegner Academy came forward with their satellite request, and that was able to be granted to them. And so there will be a new satellite opening for Wallace Stegner Academy. And just like your boards, they had their annual OTMA training. And so just a reminder that that is required once a year. So if your board has not done that recently, you might want to remind them of their yearly OTMA training. Our next directors meeting will be March 13th, again from 12:30 to 3:30. And employee of the month. We love celebrating those great employees of the month. Get your nominees in. As you saw today, board members can nominate, you can nominate, employees at your school, they can nominate. We love getting a great variety of nominations. So that's all we have from the USBE, from our partners, and from the State Charter School Board. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to throw them in chat or reach out to us, and we are always happy to get you the information that you need. Then without further ado, we will turn the time over to Aspen Florence. And Aspen is here to talk about truancy and absenteeism. And we're excited to learn from her and get some great information. So Aspen, we will turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks so much for having me. This is I didn't realize there would be so many people on the Zoom. So here we are. I'm excited to talk about attendance and hopefully answer some questions and give some tools and support. I am going to practice sharing my screen and make sure that that works. Can you see addressing attendance right now?
Yes, we can see it in the regular view, not the presenter view.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. I am going to go ahead and put this in the chat so that everyone can access it, if that feels okay. Within this also, so you will want to maybe pull this up or at least save it somewhere useful, because there are lots of links within this slide deck as well that you can go back in and reference when we're done. So I am going to ask, if at all possible, I know that we're all at schools working and cameras are tricky. This is a pretty interactive presentation, and the point is to kind of meet your need and make sure that that you're not wasting your next hour. So if you can turn your screens on, if it feels feasible. Obviously we're all adults and you can choose, but I would appreciate screens on, and then we'll kind of talk about like groupings and things moving forward. So you should have that in the chat, so you can open up the slide deck. I see some people are already on it. Feel free to, you will want to take notes today. So if you have a good way to take notes, that will be useful. And then also, I am always available to kind of problem solve or answer questions. Attendance is actually a pretty new thing. That attendance has always been part of schools. It's a pretty new thing that we're addressing as a state and trying to provide some structure and support around. And so this is kind of the initiation of that. And so I'm constantly looking to problem solve and engage with schools with the things that they're working towards. So for today, these are my proposed ways of being. I was not in the first part of the meeting, so maybe you already went through those. I'm going to ask for the next hour if these ones feel okay. So just stay solution focused. I'm going to show you some data that for sure does not feel well around attendance here in a second. I'm sure that you're experiencing similar data deficits at your school. And so I do want to propose that there's always a best next step, and that we can move this in a direction that doesn't feel so tricky if we stay solution focused. I also like to propose person-centered ways of being. So the idea that as we're looking at this, we give ourselves grace as leaders. We give the teachers and staff that we're working with grace or ability to kind of think through them as humans as we're working through this. And then obviously the students that we're thinking about, and families and community that we're working towards, just making sure we keep the person at the center of all of our problem solving, instead of starting to look at whether or not they're a barrier or an asset. And then focused engagement. So Zoom is tricky to stay focused engagement. I know you've been in meetings for a long time. So whatever focused engagement looks like for you today, I'm going to ask that you try and implement that. And then we'll end with some action. So I'm a huge proponent of professional learning that is engaged in action, that you can go back in the next hour or day and implement something from this. And so those are kind of our ways of being this way. I am possibly going to try grouping. We'll see how it works. Is grouping an option that I have to put people in groups to chat?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay, we'll practice it. Again, we already went through cameras. If you can have your cameras on, I appreciate that. I also understand that the circumstances are tricky. If you have questions, I will be monitoring the chat. There are enough of us that that's probably where questions need to come, or you can email me as well. And then any of the forms that I show today are yours to make a copy of and use as you choose. So those are things that you can do as well. So anything that we need to add to ways of being or questions around procedures for today? I see shaking heads. Okay, perfect. I'll take that. Thanks. Ted, I see yours in particular. So thank you. Okay. So objectives. So participants will have a basic understanding of attendance. So we have had some shifts in our board rule. We've had some shifts in state policy and really kind of talk about what is written in there currently. And then there's actually some new stuff going through the session as of today, actually at 4. So we'll kind of talk about what that might look like and how that might affect us. I want you to reflect on your own attendance process and connect to other systems of support, and then we'll action plan. So those are the objectives. We only have an hour, but we do have another hour scheduled again in the future. So this way we're able to start thinking about it, maybe engage a little bit, and then come back and talk about how that went. So schools are more likely to improve student attendance and reduce chronic absenteeism with 3 broad strategies. So the first is taking a comprehensive approach to attendance with activities that involve students, families, and community. So we'll talk about how attendance has mostly been strictly based on what chronic absenteeism and how we send letters. And now we're talking about how do we promote attendance within our schools and our communities. B, use more positive involvement activities than negative or punishing activities. So the research is really clear around positive promotion and how that affects the majority of our students much more readily than the negative or punishing activities. And then also sustaining a focus on improving attendance over time. So we want to make sure that just because we're experiencing a large amount of non-attendance currently, that's not the only reason we're addressing it, and we have consistent ways to address this over a period of time. On the next slide, you can click on this. I want to make sure we just last week were able to publish our most recent attendance data for the state, and you're able to see this by LEA and by demographic as well. So when you go into the reports there, that's the state link. And then to see our chronic absenteeism rates, we're on enrollment and membership. And you can see the rates come right here. They're through the end of last school year. And so you're able to see what that looks like as recently as the end of last school year. It'll download it into a Excel document for you, which is unfortunate. But let's see if I can share that screen instead. Are you able to see the Excel document, or are you still seeing my state office?
Now we can see the Excel document.
Perfect. Okay. So in here, you're able to go by grade level, demographic, LEA. I'm just going to look at the demographic, and I just want to show you that where we're currently at right now as a state. Our charter total of K through 12 chronically absent students, so that would be that 10% or more, was 29%. So in our charters, 29% of our students missed last year 10% or more of the school year, as compared to in 2021, 19%. So we saw a 10% increase last year in that. Which is significant. And then if you go back to kind of pre-pandemic levels, we were at a 14% in 2018 and a 13% in 2017. So we have seen a pretty drastic rise in student-based chronic absenteeism. I know that you all are well aware of that. That's why we're here talking about it today. But I did want to point out that it was significant again last year. So it's not something that just kind of evened itself out or that was a result of kind of post-pandemic thought process, but but we're continuing to struggle with it. And then if you dive a little bit deeper into that data, you'll see that the demographics that are struggling in particular are our most at-risk demographics. And so it's a concern across the state and more specifically for our students that are experiencing other areas that they need support in. So I am going to go ahead and give you a second to kind of look at that data and possibly just talk in groups about what your LEA is currently experiencing, and then we'll move on as far as what your data looks like, what you're noticing, and then we'll move on to some of what our state policy and procedure looks like, and then also some of the tools that I have available for you. So I don't see where I can make groups actually.
Sorry, Lisa, I think you're the host. Can you make Aspen a co-host so that she can have the breakout rooms?
Okay, she's been made a co-host.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you. Let's see if I now have the skills to do that. There we go, breakout rooms. Okay, so I am going to put you into breakout rooms, just of 3 to 4 people, and we'll just go for about 4 minutes talking about data, and then we'll be right back in. So about 4 minutes talking about your school's data. Is it similar to the state data? What's the most recent number surprising to you? And then we'll come back and we'll ask for one person from your group to just share in the chat of a general overview. So we'll go for 3 minutes in these groups, 3 to 4 minutes. I'll probably do a quick check-in at that 3 minute, and then wait till you're kicked out. So don't come back as soon as it comes out, wait till you're kicked out so that everyone's coming back at the same time and people aren't having to wait.
Sorry, I can join a breakout room because I'm with the state charter school board. So
Perfect. You're great. Yeah. You know, I'm not going to force you to. It's okay. Yeah. But thanks for letting me know.
sure.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, thank you all for engaging in your groups and thanks for coming back into the main group. I am going to ask that whoever you chose to kind of summarize your thoughts in the chat, go ahead and put that in the chat now. If you didn't decide anyone from your group can enter, that's okay. I think I tried to make it to where everyone had at least a group. Some started with one, but I hope you found a group. So go ahead and write in the chat. What did you guys think about and talk about quickly in your groups around the current data? Okay, perfect. Thanks for, if you're still typing, that's okay to finish typing that in the chat. Thanks for putting things in there. It looks like there were some questions around how the data is accounted for. There's also questions around maybe kind of root causing of why that might be the case. So what actually counts as an absence? And the answer to that is it depends on your policy in regards to how it fits within the state policy. And so I'm happy to answer those based on individual spaces around how that's being accounted for. Typically, a student that has an absence that is longer than half a day counts as a school absence, depending on how the school is reporting that. An unexcused absence or an excused absence may both count as an absence. Sometimes an excused absence does not count as an absence. And so it really depends on how you're sending that information to the state. And I'm happy to engage with that. And then also the idea that, yeah, guess what? For a long time, we told kids not to come to school if they're experiencing any symptoms of sickness. And so that might be what's accounting for this, is when a student has a runny nose, they're not coming. Also, there's been lots of flexibility in attendance and what counts that way, and the increase of online availability and things along those lines. And then, yeah, and it's pretty widespread. If you go into it, it looks very similar across grade levels. There are also hotspots within those grade levels. And then, almost every LEA has experienced an increase in chronic non-attenders. And so today we're going to kind of talk about what, like I said, what policy fits that, what board rule says about that, and then also just some tools that we can start addressing this with, as far as what the state's offering and then what individual LEAs are offering. So right now, these are the current statutes that address that. So we still a truancy support statute is still currently in statute. That comes from a lot of the JJS reforms. We also have educational neglect as a minor that lives in there. And then response to school-based behavior. We also have in board rule, absenteeism and truancy prevention, what policy, like state LEA attendance policy requirements are, and then what the requirements for compulsory education. I will say, as a state right now, we're working very hard to put in alignment what compulsory education looks like, as in regards to how we prevent that from being needed, and then how we engage with that once it is needed. DCFS does not currently prosecute those cases unless it's co-occurring with something else. Now, that said, we can still send that to DCFS, and if that's something that you're interested in, that will come in further training around what that looks like and feels like. I will say right now we have, again, a 29% chronic non-attender rate, which is indicative of a tier 1 issue as a state, meaning that we have more students that are struggling with attendance than we can intervene for based on a tiered model of support. And so we're really heavily focused on how do we build out tier 1 systems for attendance within the state to start addressing what that looks like. And so we're going to talk a lot about that today. If you do have any questions on policy or rule, those are questions that I'm very happy to address on an individual basis based on what your LEA is looking to hope to have happen that way. These are some of the trainings that the state's currently offering that match that. So we did just finish our functional behavior assessment of absenteeism through Safe and Civil Schools training. I will be sending out here shortly applications for LEAs to be part of that for next year. It will be a sequence process next year for LEAs to engage in tiered system of support around attendance. And it's, I cannot recommend that training enough. If anyone in this cohort was it, or in this group was in that last year's cohort, it's very useful as far as planning, and next year it will be more conducive around that. We also do trauma-informed interactions trainings, self-care and stress reduction for educators trainings, countering the effects of trauma in students, prevention, science overview, and restorative practices. So obviously this is the only one that has absenteeism or attendance in it. All of these are some of the variables as to why a student might be struggling to attend. And so those foundational based knowledge pieces are important to have as we start to build out our attendance-based systems. So I just wanted you to have that. And again, if you have any questions, again, I'm happy to help navigate those pieces. Attendance Works is where a lot of our attendance-based process comes from. As a state, we have worked closely with them in the past and continue to do so to help build attendance-based systems for Utah. This indicates what positive conditions for learning are for a student to be engaged in attending regularly. So, and we know this is, I'm not going to tell you a lot of new information. I'm going to help provide tools for information that maybe you already have and haven't been able to progress past. But we know that physical and emotional health and safety is a big need for students to be able to then engage in school. We know that belonging, connection, and support is also another big indicator of whether a student is going to attend school or not. That sense of belonging actually is one of the biggest risk factors for a student not stopping attending school. So if they don't have a current sense of belonging, they are significantly more likely to stop attending school. We know that academic challenge and engagement is another piece that students may tip them towards coming or not coming to school. They have to be challenged when they're there. They have to find it valuable, but also they have to be able to engage. If it's not content that they are able to engage in all throughout a day, they're going to struggle to attend as well. And then we know that adult and student well-being and emotional competence is another part of what school culture looks like. And when we have a healthy school culture, students are more likely to attend in that school. And so these are some of the key areas that we always want to keep in mind as far as what does our school system look like. Those are actually very measurable, concrete areas that we can action plan around, and we'll talk about that as well. I'm going to do one more slide and then we're going to go into a small breakout so that you don't have to listen to me talk for forever. But this next slide is something I want you to talk about or think about. So when we start to, when we're talking about addressing behavior, and attendance is very much a behavior, it's tricky because it's a behavior that can be a root cause of our community-based system. It can be a root cause of our family-based system, our student-based system, or our school-based system, and that's why attendance becomes pretty convoluted at different points. But these are different ways that we address behaviors within our school setting, or even in our kind of family structure settings. So the first piece is we can ignore or punish. And so we used to kind of address, and still very prominent in our statute, is that idea of kind of punishing. So punishing is the idea of I'm going to send a letter and send a student to DCFS or JJS, or I'm going to provide a fine or a fee for a student based on their attendance issues. And punishment, or if I were to look at behavior, like in a school setting, when I'm punishing, I'm doing an office referral, or I'm suspending a student, or things along those lines, or they're missing recess or something like that. Ignoring and punishing is used often because it has low short-term effort. It's easy to send a letter. It's easy to do some of those quick kind of punishment. It's easy to set a fine. But if a student has a skill deficit, so ignoring and punishing works when the student has the skill to engage, and they're choosing not to. So it's a performance deficit. So they're choosing not to. And so that punishment shifts what's reinforcing to a student and makes attending actually more reinforcing because of the punishment. So but punishment has low short-term effort, or low short-term effort, meaning it's easy to do, but it also has high long-term effort, which means that we have to continue to engage in that practice to continue to incentivize the student to engage. So as soon as there's no longer a fee with attendance, then the student would stop attending again. So, or with non-attendance, so then the student would stop attending again. So we have to continue to provide that threat of punishment in order for the student to engage. And it has low long-term impact, meaning that it doesn't actually provide the why for attendance, and it doesn't provide skill set for the student to engage if they have a skill deficit. So the next piece that we engage in a lot is accommodating. So accommodating are things like when I worked for Ogden School District, I'd make phone calls in the morning to the student, and I'd say, are you awake? Okay, like do you need us to come get you? What does that look like? And we would make it to where what was happening with the student was readily accessible at that point. Accommodating doesn't build skill sets. Again, it just makes things accessible. So accommodating for like behavior is like we move the student to the front of the front of the room, or we don't sit them next to someone that they're going to chat with. It doesn't necessarily build skill, but it makes the expectation more accessible to the student. Accommodating is a little bit harder than ignoring or punishing. So medium short-term effort, meaning it takes some effort to call the student, move the seat, things along those lines. It has medium long-term effort, meaning we have to continue with that accommodation because again, we didn't build skill set. So we have to continue to keep the student separate from the other students. I have to continue to call the student in the morning or provide transportation. And it has low long-term impact because as soon as I stop accommodating, the student may or may not be able to engage in the desired outcome. And then our last piece is skill building. So we have skill building takes a lot of work in that first part. It has high short-term effort, meaning that when we're building a skill or running an actual intervention with a student that builds a skill, it takes a lot of effort. So running social skills with students, or doing a intense goal setting with a family and a student around attendance that is actually, and then following through with fidelity and building the skills around why they're not attending takes a lot of work, but it has low long-term effort because once we've built a skill, the student can then engage independently in that space, and it has high long-term impact, which means that regardless of what grade they're in or what teacher they have or what principal they have, they'll be able to take that skill that was built and generalize it into some of those other settings. So all of these areas are something that we engage in and can be effective. So I for sure am not saying we should never ignore or punish, that it never works, or we should never accommodate. We should do all of these things in our school setting. We just need to know when and which one we're doing, because accommodating, if we continue to accommodate, we're going to wear out our teaching profession, right? So teachers accommodating for attendance could be things like, oh, you weren't here yesterday, so I'm going to reteach the lesson to you again and again and again. And eventually that's going to wear our educators out, right? And now it makes it more accessible for the students. It's the right thing to do. But at the same time, we need to then start skill building so the teacher does not have to accommodate forever, right? And so, and then again, ignoring punishing. So I have a 12th grader right now that for sure, his main reason he goes to school is because he wants to not have attendance credit loss, so that, you know, he's not punished. And so that for sure has a place for him in his setting that he's in. And so I am going to put you in groups and kind of talk about, where do I see the fact that I'm relying on punishing or ignoring? Where do I see that we're accommodating, and where do I see that we're skill building? And how do I know when I'm in each different category, with a student, a family, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and put you in your rooms. I'm going to recreate and see if we can make sure that there's participants. This time we're going to go for about 5 minutes talking about those 3 things. So ignoring, punishing, accommodating, or skill building. And then we'll be right back in to look for some comments and thoughts around those pieces in regards to attendance.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for grouping up. Oh, there's your timer. Grouping up and having conversations. I'm going to ask that in the chat, whoever was chosen to put in the chat, just put some quick comments in so we can kind of see what was discussed around different areas that we might ignore, punish, accommodate, or skill build around attendance within our school setting. Excellent. Okay, so keep typing if you're still typing, but actually really like a lot of what's said is the noticing of, hey, so turns out that when you have a second grader, they're pretty reliant upon their family to get to school, right? And so, so thinking about what are the different areas that might actually be the deficit, and who are we skill building with? Are we skill building in relation with families, with community, with students? What does that look like? And really understanding kind of some of the root causes of why students may or may not be attending our schools. I know that we are going to talk about this, but as a state right now, we don't really have a good way to identify root cause. And so I'm going to show some areas around how do we start thinking about what is it? Why are students not attending school at my school in particular? Does it shift by grade? What does that look like? And then really, how do we start addressing based on what we're noticing in those spaces? So this is that I've cited this research at the end. It's Melvin et al. And it was done in 2019. And I like the framework around it. And by no means do I think that every educator should be reading a significant amount of research. I think that that's our job to share research with you all. But I liked this visual in particular because it actually speaks to the complexity of attendance. So we have our macro system, which is socioeconomic resources, the neighborhood, the cultural values, local environment and government policy that affects attendance. Then we have the exosystem, which is the community support service and infrastructure around that, transportation, extended families, school type. Then we have our micro and mesosystems, which are the actual child, the parent, and then the school. And then we also have the chronosystem, which is the school year and the cohort effects as it goes, which would take into account a pandemic. And so this is not easy work, and we're going to keep working towards it to where our data no longer looks the way that it does. But I think that noticing of it could be a deficit in any one of these areas that's affecting that or deficits, but just naming what systems we're currently working in to address attendance, I think is important for us to look at. we have lots of people getting admitted and not admitted. Sorry about the beeping constantly. I don't know if you can hear it. So this, again, this is good research. It's called the KITES framework. And I think it's one of my favorite frameworks for looking at and addressing attendance. Along those lines, we know that we have a tier 1 issue within our school setting, and it's not going to do us a lot of good to start with how do we run intervention for 30% of our kids within our school. That will exhaust your school teams, that will exhaust your teachers, and probably you'll continue to filter students into that system rather than kind of control who's going into that system. So this is the first tool that I wanted to share with you today. It's clickable, which means that it should take you to a Google Doc that you can use, make a copy of, and choose to use in whatever way feels best for you in your setting. Let's see. That's not what I wanted to do. Here we go. I'm going to try and make it bigger to where you can see it a little bit better on my screen. But again, you're more than welcome to make a copy and use this however you choose. This goes through some areas that you can go back and say, okay, do we actually have a good tier 1 attendance system within our school setting? So board rule states that schools should have a tier 1 attendance team. So an attendance team that's looking at that, and they should have a clear policy. So that is part of board rule. This helps kind of guide through what that looks like. So these are questions that your attendance team, or sometimes we can say, you know what, our school leadership teams get a function as our attendance team. Our PBIS teams get a function as our attendance team. And those are both very appropriate ways to start looking at attendance, or maybe you do have an attendance team. This document is meant for you to go through and start saying what are our quick wins? What things do we have in place? What do we not have in place to address those different systems that we just talked about? So first is, do we take accurate attendance? So that sounds like a pretty common sense answer, except for a lot of our attendance-based systems are positive-based attendance systems, which means that if a teacher doesn't take attendance, the student will be marked present. And so we really want to look at and say, are we actually taking attendance? Do our teachers know what our attendance policy and procedure is, and are they taking it? And then you would answer yes or no. And then what evidence do we have towards that, and what action do we want to take if it's not something that's in place yet? Do we have a way to quickly disaggregate attendance by student? So this is an area that sometimes attendance is hard to look at. So we don't want to look at our daily attendance rates. We do our percentage rates. We do want to be able to look at what individual students are starting to struggle with attendance, because we want to intervene as early as possible. So do we have a quick way to better understand that, hey, Aspen just hit her 2nd day or 3rd day of an unexcused absence, or even an excused absence, time to start intervening because we're getting into that at-risk range. Do we have a way to know when students start to struggle? So that would be that disaggregation. And have we defined what start to struggle means at our school? Is that after they've missed 2 days? Is that after they've missed consecutive days? Is that a certain percentage based on the time of year that we're in? Are we looking at tardies? Are we looking at what is our school-based identification of when a student starts to struggle? We have a way to know what subgroups of students are not attending. So do we know who is most likely to not attend? Is it our 7th graders? Is it our 5th graders? Is it our students who receive ELL service? Who is it that's struggling to attend? Or is it our male population? Is it our female population? Is it our students that are engaged in sports? By the way, those are some of our most, especially in kind of rural areas, those are our students that are struggling the most with attendance because they miss a lot of school due to those extracurricular activities. Do we know which teachers are taking attendance? And do we have leading indicator data on our systems? So leading indicator data would be something, and again, I can go into this or answer questions around this on Attendance Works. They have some good leading indicators around student-based attendance. This questions for foundational tier 1 is a leading indicator, by the way. So it's that, what is our structure around attendance? Do we understand the state laws? Do we understand our own policy? And does that match state laws? Do we have school-based procedures regarding attendance? Do parents know how to call in? Do parents know to check students in when they're late? Do teachers know how to look at their own attendance? Do students, are they able to get late work? Are they able to hand in late work? And how long does that last? So do we have policy and procedure around that? Based on what each stakeholder, so stakeholder, family, teacher, and student would need to know to engage in our attendance-based systems. Do we have a team? Do we have a vision and mission for our team? Do we have clear roles, norms, and procedures for the team? Do we have a schedule meeting time for that team? Do we have an agenda? And do we have school and or district people dedicated to attendance? So do we actually have some jobs that have attendance within their description? And then the last part is just community, which goes to that one of those slides that we talked about from Attendance Works, is do we have PBIS or a strong culture in our school? Do we limit out of school time for consequences? Do we partner with families early on? Do we gather information from families regarding attendance? It's important and why it might be difficult. Do we have a system for two-way communication between families and school? And do we use our community partners to help with attendance? So these are all tier 1 questions to ask ourselves around attendance. Again, you don't have to use this form. It's just a tool that you can start kind of engaging in strengths and weaknesses around what I currently have in place and maybe what that first next best step might be on that. I'm kind of excited about this because I don't have a lot of technological skills, but you can click down and say, if we've started this, it's fully implemented, or no, we have nothing around this, and then kind of create some action around it. Also, I just noticed there's an option 4. I told you I don't have technological skills, so sorry about option 4. We'll fix that, or you can fix it. But I'm going to give you, what time is it? Do I have till 2? Is that correct?
Yes, till 2 o'clock.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to give you a second to look at this. I'm going to throw you back into groups to look at how this might be used in your school setting. If any of these particularly, like is data an area we need to work on, or taxonomy and communication, teaming, or community, what area might we be thinking about in our school as far as into our tier 1 structure? And then we'll come back and talk about, I have 2 tools that I want to show you, and then we'll leave a little bit of time for conversation. So throw you back into your rooms.
Aspen, can you please put the link back in the chat? Every time we go in and out, we lose it.
Which link?
Any of them, this form, the link for it kind of thing, like all the links are gone, the chat resets. So,
absolutely. Yep.
thank you.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, thanks. Thanks again for engaging. I know I tried to adjust teams based on who is able to join and not join. Right now I'm putting the slide deck back in, so you have that as well. So that just went back into the chat if you don't have the slide deck, and you should be able to click on any of these documents from the slide deck. So kind of just, let's see, hover over and be able to kind of click. So it should show there. So that should be clickable. So I'm going to ask for thoughts. Was there a specific area on this that you talked about, or does this document have some usability, or would you need something different within your school setting to help start those conversations around that? So I'm going to ask for comments in the chat around that. Perfect. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, Carrie, I agree. Like that sometimes there's this idea of, oh, this is a great plan and implementation looks much different than the plan. And so again, like this is always an interactive process around, here are some tools, what works for you, what doesn't, and then we make best next steps based on what is currently available in your setting. So thank you for that feedback there. Yep, and exactly. Yep, this is very similar to MTSS behavior flow sheet, which is purposeful, meaning that as we're setting up systems within our school-based setting, we want them to be replicable and sustainable. And the best way to have them be that way is to fit within accordance of each other. So I am, the next piece is a systems planning document. I'm not going to actually cover that today, but you do have it. It goes through, so we just talked about tier 1. This is a tier 2 kind of systems planning document around attendance. I will share after you have access to this one that is the example, I believe. Yep, so this goes through an example of how to plan a tier 2 system around attendance. Again, if your tier 1's not sufficiently in place, I don't recommend you move to this space quite yet. We don't want to overwhelm staff or ourselves, or actually kind of disperse our effort to where it's not useful in either category. But this is here. I'm not going to run through it today, but you do have it, and I'm happy to answer any questions on it. And then the last piece that I want to talk about, this is from Safe and Civil Schools, or no, this is from Attendance Works. It does go into what are the different barriers students may be engaging with that are making it hard for them to attend. So this goes back to the first of the training where a lot of people were saying, this might be why our data looks this way. And this is what the research through Attendance Works says might be the reason for students not attending. So they kind of broke it down into 4 different areas, which I find is helpful. And then the tool after I'll show you is a tool that you can use to start thinking about this. But students may be experiencing barriers, so they may have chronic or acute illness. We find this a lot actually in our special education population, that they're more likely to be ill more often and then struggle with attendance. They have family responsibilities or home situations. They've had experienced trauma or are currently experiencing trauma. They may struggle with transportation, housing or food insecurity, things along those lines. The next is aversion. So students may be struggling academically or behaviorally, so they no longer actually want to come to school because it's aversive to be there. They may not feel welcome at the school. They may have anxiety. They may feel like they have biased disciplinary or suspension practices. They may have an undiagnosed disability, or their parents had negative educational experiences, and so they're not engaging in that. They may be engaging in disengagement because of lack of enrichment activities. They may be bored. They may not be earning credits, or they may have misconceptions. So this idea that absences are only a problem if they're unexcused. Missing 2 days per month doesn't actually really matter. I'm able to stay caught up. I don't actually know how much I'm not attending, or a suspension doesn't count, or attendance only matters if you're in other grades. So these are actually 4 different areas that we would kind of engage in that root cause analysis. And I would say at a tier 1 level to start. So as we look at these and we know our students who are in that 30% category, what is our biggest area that we would want to address as a school, based on the population that's struggling to attend, right, in that tier 1 area. So the easiest one to address is misconceptions. And this is where a lot of those attendance campaigns have come from, right? Where we share with parents and community, attendance does matter. This is how many days, like here's your magnet that you start marking the days that you've missed, right? So I'm going to put it in my newsletter. That's the easiest way to start addressing that column of misconceptions, is an attendance-based campaign. And then the other ones obviously become trickier to engage with, but we can problem solve around what that looks like as well. So the last document that you have access to as a tool is this attendance problem solving document. And it's going to take a while to load, so I apologize. Let's see if it does what it's supposed to. You have access to this as well. I'll try and make it a little bit bigger so you can see it on my screen. It has those 4 areas up top. And then it also goes down into what are possible actions we can take. So these are actions that we could take as a school based on non-attendance. And then these are interventions that have research base behind them based on non-attendance. So again, this goes more into that kind of tier 2 range. Actions, obviously, we can send a letter, we can do a home visit, we can reestablish or reteach expectations, we can collect tier 1 data to determine what engagement looks like in that classroom, we can review the student-based data to better understand what their deficit might be, and then we move into some interventions that work. So 2x10 intervention, student goal setting, check and check out, check and connect is an intervention. We do have a lot of check and connect trainings going on as a state right now, because it is one of the only research-based interventions that help with attendance. And then at the bottom here, we have, based on the deficit, what is a tier 2 action we could take and why would that meet that deficit? What are tier 2 interventions we could take? Why do those meet that deficit? And what would actually be an inappropriate action or intervention for that deficit? And so if a student has severe anxiety and we refer them to, attendance court, I don't know if you have attendance court, what could that do? Or when we say, we set up a classroom-based incentive for attendance, I've seen this happen a lot within a school setting. So schools go, hey, PBIS, great, clear expectations, taught expectations, reinforcement of expectations. All of a sudden we start saying, if your class has 95% or better attendance, you get an ice cream party at the end of the month. And then one kid keeps not attending. And then their classmates start getting frustrated that kid's not attending. That actually can be detrimental to the student's attendance rather than reinforcing to the student's attendance, especially in those younger grades. And so we want to make sure that our actions are in alignment with the barriers and they're not making the barrier worse or the deficit worse. And so again, just another tool for you to have that you can or cannot use based on how we're starting to problem solve around attendance. We do have about 5 minutes left for you to start thinking about. I usually like to end with, what is your best next step of action? So and that best next step of action should be able to occur within the next 48 hours, which means that today's Monday. So by Wednesday, you could take that next best step of action to start the trajectory of shift around attendance. It could be, I'm just going to kind of create a team, or my team's gonna look at that questioning document, or I'm gonna review some of these actions that are on here and see if I use them, or I'm gonna see what data I actually have around attendance. So just whatever our best next step is that way, so that we start the momentum towards a shift in what we're currently doing. Or you might not want to shift. Maybe your attendance looks great and you're good to go, and you might want to name what it is that's working that you want to replicate to where it's systematic within your school culture. So I don't know if we have time for questions or just even my information so that you can ask questions.
Aspen, I would say we have time for questions. Yes.
Perfect. So how do you go about questions? Is that a raise hand feature, or do they come in the chat? What works best?
Normally they either put them in chat or they can just kind of shout out.
Okay, perfect.
Just a thank you, Aspen. This is going to lead to a good discussion with our leadership team.
Good. Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it.
Aspen, I would say this. I think anytime we draw attention to something, it brings some degree of improvement, right? So I think for us, it's just been, bringing this kind of to the top of the list of many things that we do with our students, but just remembering and certainly bringing it to our parents' attention. It certainly doesn't address the full percentage, but it does improve it, and I think it reminds us to engage with each family and student individually to figure out what the situation is and help find a solution to that. So thank you.
No, thank you. I love that comment, the idea that even the fact that we're looking at it and caring about it will rise to the top as far as like other community-based spaces will care about it as well. So thank you. That's a really good thought. I will say if there are questions, so things to look forward to. I will be sending out here shortly some communication around that functional behavior assessment of attendance training that will start in July of next year, and it will be a bi-monthly kind of cohort working towards building these systems out. So if that's an area you think, oh, you know what, we're going to put that in our strategic plan for next year, or it's our school-based plan, attendance is a key point of our school-based plan. That might be something you want to do. And I am there. We have our summer summit, which will have training around attendance in that as well. And then you're always welcome to reach out for support as far as what that looks like from me. So.
All right. Well, Aspen, there's a few other just nice messages in the chat. So hopefully you have time to read those. And thank you so much for this training. And as Aspen mentioned, we will be doing another follow-up training with her. I believe that's in April, right? So Aspen will be back and we can do some follow-up then. So thank you so much. And we will see you in April, if not sooner. So
Perfect. Thank you. Yep.
All right. Well, next up we have our friends from the policy project here. So we have Mary Catherine and Emily who are here. And so we will turn the time over to them. You ladies should have screen sharing abilities. So if you have anything you want to share, you can. Otherwise, we are excited to hear from you and hear some updates. So take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Marie, and thank you to all of you directing charter schools and all the work that you're doing throughout the state. We're so grateful for all that you do and truly just taking care of so many children throughout the state. And we're so grateful for the opportunity to speak to you. We know this is a rare gift that you've let us take some time here. I'm Mary Catherine Perry. I'm the Director of Policy and Government Affairs with the Policy Project. We also spoke to you, gosh, was it about a year ago, Marie, that we talked about the Period Project?
I think we started about a year ago, then we saw you in the fall. So
that's
we're
right.
old friends, right?
Yeah,
Been here a few times.
So we're back. We're going to give you an update on the Period Project, but also introduce what we're working on now, the Teen Center Project. So I'm going to let Emily lead out. She's the founder of the Policy Project, our nonprofit, and we'll let her get started and then I'll come in later.
Okay, so nice to be here. Like Mary Catherine said, we just have so much respect for the work that you do for the kids in our state. And we're so grateful for all of the talent you bring to this pool and what a gift that is for everyone in Utah. So thank you. And thanks for giving us a moment to chat with you. So I wanted to just give you a really quick update on the Period Project. That's what we were all involved in last year, the effort to get period products into all the charter and public schools in the state of Utah, grades K through 12. You are probably all very familiar with this. And we're so grateful for everything that you have done in your schools. We thought I know we have some time for Q&A at the end of this. And so we'd love to just answer any questions or anything around that. I'm just going to give you a quick status update. So to date, the majority of schools in the state of Utah have implemented these period products in their bathrooms. We've gotten some really good feedback about how it's going, especially we tend to get that good feedback. Hopefully you're getting some of it too, where students are saying, hey, I was going to need to go home and I was able to stay because I had period products there, which is exactly what we wanted to have happen. We've gotten a little bit of feedback about, there's some waste, some misuse, and that was completely expected for this first, up to 2 years as girls menstruators get used to this. We do expect for there to be some curiosity and a little bit of waste around that, but we're able to work through it in pretty much all of the cases so far. So that's really good. So as a state with that legislation, HB 162 last year to put that into schools, it's been quite successful. We're just right now doing an audit and kind of talking to different schools, seeing how the implementation is going. And so your school should hopefully be getting a call in the next month or two to just see if you have any questions specifically. So, and if not, always reach out to us, but we're excited that that has taken hold and is making some good progress in the state. With the menstruation, we have an exciting announcement that the governor will be next week announcing that they'll be putting period products into all of the state buildings as well and offering them, having them freely offered in state buildings. So just a trend we're working on businesses and workplaces too, but grateful that schools, really cool that schools were the lead out on this. And now everybody else is like, my daughter came home and she said she used period products, and I'm putting it in my company, so it's pretty exciting. And we're grateful that you were willing to lead out on that. So that is the update on periods. What we're doing now, as we were kind of looking at schools and seeing some of the ways that schools function and the ways that students function within a school, one of our biggest interests is how do we kind of remove barriers to learning in the school place? And this is something with which you're a lot more familiar than even we are. But one thing that we saw that there were several other things that were creating a barrier to students' ability to learn. And one of those things is those kids that maybe are dealing with extreme poverty. As we started looking into what that might look like in the state of Utah, we looked at some statistics that our group was really surprised by. One of them is that 1 in 50 Utah students is experiencing homelessness. Now, homelessness defined in the same way that McKinney-Vento is defined. So that doesn't necessarily mean on the streets. That can be couch surfing. It can be any form of non-permanent housing, living in a motel, those kinds of things. I'm not sure the degree to which charter schools are experiencing it, if it's drastically different than the general public schools, but regardless, 1 in 50 felt like way too many. We also know that 1 in 3 students is receiving or eligible for free or reduced lunch. And so we have spent the last 6 months or so touring the state of Utah, going from place to place to kind of see what does this actually look like. So we've been, to Logan, we've been to Richfield, we've been to Cedar City, we've tried to stop everywhere in between to kind of see what does this look like in the state of Utah. And what we saw was we really do have some families that are trying so hard to make ends meet, working full-time jobs. But, one woman who was recently divorced was living in her car with her son. Her other son, she had 2 sons. One was couch surfing. They couldn't afford the first and last month's rent. So with housing costs rising and with the cost of inflation, all of these things going up.
Emily, I think you got muted. Sorry.
There we go. Oh, no, you're good. Can you hear me now? So, we're just seeing this poverty play out in different ways that is really creating some like extra stress for our students and an inability to fully be able to learn in class. If you're hungry, if you're stinky because you can't shower, if you're unable to wash your clothes, right? Those things are creating a barrier. We saw some kids, even in St. George, there was one school that we visited where the former principal said that they found a pocket of kids who had been sleeping on the stage at night because they didn't have a place to sleep. And so the principal at that school felt like, oh man, I can't turn them out on the street. So they let them stay, on the stage. In another case, there was a kid in the Wasatch Front who at lunch was putting mashed potatoes in his pocket. And when the teacher came up to ask him about that, he just said that his sister was hungry at home. And so he was taking her food. So we're seeing it play out in different ways in different communities, smaller towns. Rural looks a little different from the Wasatch Front, which looks a little different from the mid-sized cities like a Logan. So we've got a lot of variety of how that takes place, but we immediately met with the legislature to see what we could do about it. And the legislature had a big interest in the physiological wellness of students so that they're able to learn in class. And so we talked about the different forms that could take. And what we landed on was this idea of what we're calling a teen center. You can call it whatever you want to. Somebody told me that a teen center sounds like a hangout place, and we are not quite implementing that, although that would be very fun for our teenagers. We're looking at really getting those things that match the physiological needs of our kids into the school. So that's things like a shower, a washer and dryer, food, but also a trusted adult. And I do think that charter schools have a leg up on this, as far as it seems like you've got a really good tabs on your student body. And so we applaud you for that. Some of these really big public schools, that becomes an issue that they're not able to keep track of everybody as well. So this would provide a space where kids could come in, they could talk to an adult and understand what community resources are available to them, and then have this person connect them to those. Mary Catherine's going to actually do a deep dive into this. We've got a little quick slideshow that we'd love to show you. Do you want to share? So we'll do that just kind of explains it. And then we'd love to open this up for questions, comments, feedback. We're working on kind of really defining this and narrowing what that looks like. And so we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Marie, Brooke, Gledhill Wood, Emily, is it on your computer or her own? Oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay. So I am, like I said, I'm the Director of Policy and Government Affairs. Emily gave you an excellent background on kind of why we got into this area. We know that there are a lot of experts out there, a lot of people who've been working on this for a very long time. My background is that I used to work for the legislature. And so this is a process that I am more familiar with, and so have been helping to kind of navigate this through the legislative process. So I'm going to just take you through really quick where we are, where we're going. Just to give you a very small background, there was a $3.5 million grant that was established last year, kind of as a pilot in this space. We anticipate that grant will be 100% utilized. It was given to schools as a reimbursement for schools and school districts that were able to build this space into their school. It was kind of a one size fits all, which as we go forward with the legislative ask that we're looking at, we want this to be more flexible because, as Emily said, schools look different everywhere. Schools next door to each other look different. They definitely look different from Logan to St. George. Charter schools are different than school districts. So we want to take you through where we're at. Brooke, do you mind just going through to the next slide? Okay, so Emily kind of laid this out to where we're at with students who are experiencing homelessness and lack of fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. And she gave you the statistics. The thing that's so alarming too, and that was alarming to legislative leadership when we first took this to them, that's a 34% increase in the last 2 years. That's not a number that's kind of stable. It's skyrocketing. And this was the thing that we heard over and over from counselors is we can't keep up. We can't keep up with their basic needs and teach. Kids are hungry, they're cold, they're stressed because they don't know where they're sleeping tonight. There's just a lot of factors in our state with inflation and housing, rent that are not in our students' control. And so we're seeing that start to play out with these students in school. And I love that you just got done talking about barriers to attendance in school, because this is one that we see as helping to remove some of those barriers. Okay, Brooke, let's go to the next one. Okay, so our proposed solution is a grant created through a public-private partnership to enable Utah schools to meet the needs of these students. So we could support and expand existing school services. And I want to explain that just for a second. It doesn't mean everybody's got to put in the entire thing, shower, laundry, pantry. Again, if you look into the future, that might be a wise use of space if you've got it to build in those things, but also we want to meet schools where they're at. If they haven't done anything in this space yet, maybe starting with a pantry is a great first step. Maybe if you have a pantry, you can add a washer dryer. So we truly want to make this flexible and to meet schools where they're at, not take what we or anybody else thinks is the perfect model and say, you have to do it this way. So there we have the services could include food pantry, laundry facility, shower, study area, and academic support. And then again, that trusted adult, that is going to help that student get some tutoring, figure out how to get to a doctor if they need a doctor's help, maybe fill out a FAFSA so they can apply for college and kind of move on to the next stage in life. But that trusted adult is really, really key. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a new hire. As we've seen throughout, there are some people who function like this already, but could office out of this space in a school. Maybe it's a McKinney-Vento specialist. Maybe it's somebody in your school who already does a lot of these connection to outside resources. They could be in this space and help identify and help those students. Okay, Brooke, next slide. So as we said, the current landscape, there was the 2022 appropriation. We anticipate that 100% of that will be used. As we look at Davis School District, now they are doing it really well in their own space and in their own way. But as we looked at the data coming back from this, it's really compelling. They have 5 operating teen centers. In each location, they're serving an average of 50 students per day. They, since August of 2022, have served over 1,500 unique students, and those students are coming back again and again and again. So they've had 13,000 individual services rendered since then. And the thing that I think is, as we've talked to people who have operated teen centers, whether it's East High School or Davis or Westlake or whoever is doing this kind of space, the thing that they're talking about is that students who've identified as McKinney-Vento or lacking regular and fixed housing, normally it takes them an entire school year to go through and track those down. So you kind of have your baseline at the beginning of the year, but they keep adding to it all year. In these scenarios where they have a space like this that offers those students those access to those basic needs, they're finding those students sooner and sooner because they're actually coming to school and they're able to get that help. And so that is accelerated the number of students they can get in there, get academic support, and keep on track to graduate. And then they're helping them graduate rather than letting the year go on and on and on. That finding and tracking of students is accelerated when you have a space like this. Okay, next slide. So one of the most important things too with this is supporting families and students through connections to outside services. Like we said, there are a lot of community partners out there. These are just some examples in Iron County, Logan City School District, and Washington School District, where there are community partners out there where if a student has a need, and usually there are adults in that student's life that also need help. And so if we can help transition them or help them connect to outside community partners, that is one of the key ways that a teen center can help intervene in a broader way too. Okay, next slide. So our funding proposal was ambitious. We looked at the number of schools offering high school education in the state, and we looked at, when we talked to superintendents and charter school directors around the state, we anticipated that about half of those high schools, the leadership and administration anticipated that they would want to access a grant like that. So if you look at about half of those at $250,000, it was about 28 million. And then we are also making it a public-private partnership. So are private funds that are being raised right now. We have commitments from the Larry H. and Gail Miller Family Foundation, the Huntsman Foundation, the Cook Family Foundation, the Andrus Family Foundation. So we're well on our way to helping to match that. We don't want this to be a completely legislative funded solution to this, although they are a key partner in this project, but also we wanted to help raise privately as well. So these are the key objectives: to improve academic performance and graduation rates. Flexibility is huge to fit local needs as determined by local leaders. That, like we said, not a one size fits all. We want local directors, administrators to figure out what works best for their school. Fairness for school districts of all sizes. This is definitely something that we've heard over and over too, is that when you have a smaller school district, sometimes even finding somebody to fill out a grant is tricky with charter schools or with smaller school districts. Even with larger school districts, maybe limiting them to one grant, as was done last year, was tricky too, when they're building more than one of these teen centers. So we want to look at those and consider those factors in the next grant. And then also supporting families through connections to community resources as well. So we can give you, I think that's the last slide. Is that right, Brooke? Is that our last one? Okay, so just to give you an update on the legislative landscape, we presented to the Public Education Appropriations Subcommittee, and they in turn prioritized this in their top 5 as they gave their recommendations to the Executive Appropriations Committee. In their prioritization, they prioritized $5 million towards the Teen Center project, but also with the possibility of adding to that from the Education Stabilization Fund, which we hope and are cautiously optimistic that they may do before the final budget is put out. So we are still working with the chairs and members of Executive Appropriations. We still have 3 weeks left to make sure that that number gets as much support and as much funding as possible. So that's where we are on that. And I think we're good to move on to questions now too.
Yes, and feel free to ask anything between periods or teen centers, whatever you would like.
Mary Emily, I had a quick question. What can we do to kind of help get the word out to increase that 5 million to a little closer to what you guys were requesting?
Well, we would love any support. If you know anyone or would be willing to write an email or make a phone call to members of the Executive Appropriations, that would be wonderful. We're happy to send a link over to a list of who's on that. Clearly, Speaker Brad Wilson, President Stuart Adams are on that committee. Representative Val Peterson and Senator Jerry Stevenson chair that committee. And so we would love that support. Tyler, thank you for that question. And just if you have personal stories of how this might help you at your school, those are truly very, very important to them.
And I would love to just pop in and ask you all a question. if you're willing, you could just chat this if you're willing to share your answer. But I'd love to know if we're curious about the charter schools, how much of this you are seeing in your schools, or if you feel like it's a little less pervasive in charter schools. If you're willing to share and just say, yes, I'm seeing it in the chat, or if you want to share anything about it verbally, and that's great too.
I'll jump in. Thank you, first of all, for your care and involvement in taking care of kids. I think that's something we all share. I can't, of course, speak. We're all different. Every charter school is a different demographic. We pull kids from 3 counties, Wasatch, Summit, and Salt Lake counties. And it's a pretty, typical demographic of those 3 areas. I think there's always a need, and I think when there's availability, the need becomes more verbalized, and people are willing to say, hey, that, they may not ask for it, but then when it's there, it sort of makes it, gives some dignity to it, I think, versus someone reaching out and asking, where they may not be comfortable doing that. So I would say, yeah, the need is there, and I think it will become more apparent as the resources are made available.
Steve, thank you for sharing that. I love that, just your perspective on that. And I will say we're doing some work we employed a group at Brigham Young University to do some work around stigma and shame, because one of the concerns we have is we don't ever want this to develop into an us versus them that would maybe make kids hesitate before using it. And they were just actually up at a high school in Cache Valley. They did a focus group, and they said one of the questions they asked the kids was, would you use a washer and dryer? And these were free flow answers. And one kid, they were kind of quiet for a minute. One kid said, I guess that would be kind of nice. Like for after wrestling, maybe I could wash my clothes. And a couple kids nodded and said something about sports, because that was kind of the safe space to say something. And finally, one of the girls said, actually, I would love it to wash my clothes because laundromats are so expensive and they take so much time. And as soon as she was able to kind of admit that, and say it freely, the surveyors just said that every kid in the room was like, yeah, I would too. It would be so nice to have that at school, which I think speaks a little bit to that piece about, giving them the dignity and kind of like normalizing it's okay to use these things. That's okay. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for these comments. They are really, really interesting and so good to understand kind of where some of your schools are. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I think if there is anything, please reach out to us. We love hearing from you. And we recognize that our strength as an organization, as a nonprofit, is really in helping draw some attention toward issues, especially that are affecting our kids. That's what we've focused on the last couple of years, and drawing some resources to them through private funding, through philanthropists, and also through funding from the legislature. So we're always open to hear thoughts you have, and please feel free to reach out to us at any time. And thank you again for having us.
Yes, thank you. And one thing I just want to add at the end too is that one of our huge dimensions to this is the community outreach. We truly want to provide families and students who go to these schools and live in these communities to also help support and be part of the solution and give these families and students a positive way to engage with their schools and with the administrators there. We know that your jobs aren't easy, they're really hard. And so we want to create ways that schools and students and families in the community truly can come in and support the work that you're doing as well. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Marie.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for leading out. I think, just echoing those comments, and we appreciate the work that you guys are doing. So thank you for being here and sharing with us today. All right, well, we are at our last agenda item, and so we have our State Charter School Board Vice Chair, Cindy Phillips, and she is here to do our training topic today. And that topic is strategies for supporting teachers in your school, how to make next year better. And so we are excited to have that training topic and to learn from her, and we will turn the time over to her. So thank you, Vice Chair Phillips, for being here.
Thanks so much, Marie. And I know that you guys are at the end of a long day of training, so I kind of front loaded this presentation so that maybe some of the ideas you can grab at that are both sort of free or inexpensive ways to support your teachers, or some that have varying degrees of cost or resource allocation right at the beginning. So as you need to leave, it's something I think Marie could send out as well, if people have to leave kind of in the middle, and we'll try to do it quickly too. And I want, Marie, I'm not 100% sure if I've linked to two different teeny short things outside of my presentation. If I need to stop and share, I will, because I have the links up already in a different thing. So let me go ahead to here.
When you go to share your screen at the bottom on the left.
Oh, yes, share sound.
Yep, then you should be golden.
Should I optimize for video clip too, do you think?
Yes.
That's a good idea. Okay, there we go.
We are in optimal position now.
Oh dear. Maybe I'll have to cancel that. But I will go to the links themselves, okay, to share.
That sounds great. We can see your presentation.
Okay, very good. Good to know. All right, so this is basically strategies for supporting your teachers at your school that I hope will be kind of easy to implement, and how to make next year better. And one of the reasons you should care about this, sorry, my bad, is that when you actually make a kind of systemic effort to support your teachers, even if it takes a couple years to really get it right, your teachers stay longer, they stay forever, or for whatever forever is in the teaching world. And they also love their jobs. They're more committed. So paying attention to this is a good idea. So what do teachers want from their leaders? I wanted to give you a couple of clips. Let's see if this will work. And maybe what I'll do is actually go out of the presentation for a second and go to my links and stop sharing, and then share the links. I think that might work better if I can find them. Okay, so one of the things good principals do, and I'm going to see, Marie, you tell me if this is good, if you can hear this sound. Good principals actually take care of their teachers.
Miss Harper, what's the matter? Why you
Can you hear it?
Who cussed you out? Jacoby's mama cussed you out and then hung up on you. Who does she think she? No, you do not have to call her back. You do not have to call. We do not tolerate abuse. You don't have to call her back. I'll call her. Okay, I'll call her. Let her cuss me out. Because I don't know who she thinks she talked to. She's not gonna cuss out my teacher. No, you are not taking any of that responsibility. No, ma'am, that is not your fault. We do not take responsibility for other people's bad behavior. No, ma'am. I have watched you for several weeks be real gracious with her, and she got the audacity to cuss you out. No, ma'am, I'll call her. Okay, because I want to hear her with my own ears cuss me out. No, ma'am, you go back to your classroom, turn your lights out, relax, get you another cup of coffee, turn on some soft music, whatever you need to do, okay, and I'll handle it. Don't cuss my teachers out. Where my phone at?
What I love about that is that you'll see shortly what the research shows are the most important things to teachers that they, in terms of support from their principals. And then I wanted to show you this cute little clip just because it's funny. Can you see this one as well? This is, of course, from the series on Abbott Elementary. Okay.
Guys, I need a new rug. Mine is officially done.
Me too. I shook mine out and all of the asthma kids had to go to the nurse's office.
Yeah, mine's busted. And you can't class up a rug like you can a couch with a nice coat of plastic.
Hey, yo, what it do, baby boo? Y'all think about this little film crew I brought in here.
Distracting, makes our jobs harder.
But excited. You about to be on TV.
Because they are covering underfunded, poorly
Make it bigger now.
in America.
Make what bigger?
Right.
Look at Mel Gibson, still thriving. Daddy's home too. Hilarious.
Ava's our principal. She has a unique take on her job.
She's bad at her job. What's unique is that she's bad at her job.
There you are. Ava, can I talk to you? I need an aide. I'm outnumbered in there. The kids are crazy. One of them told me to mind my six this morning. I don't know what that means. I need help.
Calm down. They're just kids. And besides, aides cost money and we don't have that.
Right, but I just...
Do you want to split your salary with somebody else? No, I didn't think so. Well, if we can't get aids, maybe we can get new rugs. All I'm hearing is new, need. And yet Barb, one of our best and most senior teachers here, she complains. What is your secret, Barb?
Knowing there's not much you can do, Ava.
So understanding. Be like Miss Howard, people.
Okay, let me escape from that. And get back to my PowerPoint and share that if I could stop sharing. Let's see. And we'll share again. Thanks for your patience with that. So one of the things that teachers, and I've embedded some other links there that you can look at, but something you need to know is that essentially what teachers really care about from you, and I hope those were sort of two different ones. I'm going to minimize this because I can't see what I'm doing. The thing that all teachers, no matter what level they're at, according to a couple of studies that have been done by Jan Richards, the two things that matter most are whether or not a leader supports teachers in matters of student discipline, and sorry about the typo, and a leader that supports teachers with parents. And teachers care more about those two things above than they do about praise and acknowledgement, even relationship with you specifically, even though they do care about all those things. They don't care about those as much as they care about those two things. And I want you to think about that for a minute, because if you support your teachers, particularly with parents and also with student discipline in an appropriate way, whether that's, restorative justice that you do at your school or whatever you do, that will matter more to them than anything you do. And it doesn't cost you well, it does cost you time, it does cost you effort, but it does not cost you money in that regard. It might cost you resource in terms of your time. But think about that. If you were to do just one thing for next year, better than you're doing this year, it would be doing that. Teachers care about that the very most. Moving on. Yes.
Cindy, your slides are not advancing.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Let me stop the share and see if I can share again. Can you see this slide called variations depending on experience?
This one says, put yourself in teacher's shoes.
Okay. And it's not advancing, huh?
Nope.
Well, what I think I'm going to do then is share again without the video, or without this actually going. Let's try this one. Is it advancing now? Did that advance?
Yes, we're at something you need to know.
Okay. And that's something we've already covered. So I'm going to go variations depending on experience. And remember,
Perfect.
I mentioned the two
That
things
looks great.
the two things that teachers care about most, again, are that the leader supports the teachers with parents and in matters of discipline. So the study also showed that, and I thought this was interesting and it ought to be brought up to you, that if you're early in your career as a teacher, you do care, after those two things we mentioned, most about emotional support and safety. And if you're kind of in that 6 to 10 years of experience, you really want to start being respected as a professional after those first two things we mentioned, because all teachers cared about that. And so these teachers are also really interested in mentoring, because they finally feel like they know what they're doing and want to really give back in that way. Maybe even show off a little, but support other people. And they've just had that experience of being a new teacher and finally figuring it out. And they want to give back on that. And then teachers who are your veteran teachers, they want you to respect them. They want you to ask their opinion. They want you to value their input. They want to have a seat at the table for decision making. And that kind of makes sense. If you think about yourself as a teacher, if you've been a teacher for any period of time, and you think about the teachers that you supervise and lead at your schools. So we talked about the advantages of supporting teachers. They stay in the profession, they provide stability and continuity to your school. So I wanted to get to, and I've done a lot of thinking about this since Marie asked me to do this training and presentation. So this is kind of the gospel according to Cindy Phillips, if you will. And the research that I did subsequent to actually making my list backs me up, gives some nuanced variation and details. And I've included that in the PowerPoint. But I'm going to go through what I think is most important. And then depending on the time, I'm going to let you look at the things that the researchers say. And I also have a bibliography that you could look at. So this is the stuff you can do for free. You can let your teachers leave campus or log out if you're a virtual school or a hybrid school blended in some way, when their formal work for the day is done. That actually doesn't cost you anything. They're on salary. They take work home every night, over the weekend, on breaks. So if they can leave instead of treating them like hourlies when they're not hourlies, that's very, very affirming. Cut your faculty meetings down in number and time. And, kudos to Steve Williams. I'm affiliated with the Wileman School still, and he's the director there. The meetings there are few and they're short, usually 1 hour at the most. They try to do 45 minutes to an hour. And I was even thinking, Steve, as I was putting this together, there are probably a couple meetings out of the 4 a month that you could cut out. And I know you do that regularly, or at least redirect them to PLCs and other kinds of things that your teachers can do for collaborative time rather than kind of the traditional formal meeting. Give teachers some real decision-making authority, give teachers trust and autonomy for the most part in their courses. All of those things are very meaningful to teachers, and adopt an open door policy and really listen to your teachers' needs. If you use the Google Suite or lots of different applications, you can be more efficient in the way you use collaborative documents and emails. It really cuts down on time. Teachers are very, very protective of their time with students. They're trying desperately to have balance in their between work and their families and things. And we don't always make it as easy as we could. So think about this is some of the stuff you can do for free to support your teachers for next year. More free support. Ensure that evaluations are meaningful. If you're just going through the motions with observations and goal settings and all of that sort of thing, find a different way to evaluate your teachers so that you don't waste their time. I remember sitting one time, and I was an administrator. I wasn't the executive director. It was a different school. And so I was not the highest administrative level, but I got some assignments from the higher administrators, and I did them with diligence. And and it took me a long time, and I did an excellent job, a comprehensive, detailed job. And I walked into the meeting, and it was my turn, and I said, I have what you assigned me, what we need for this next step. And they all looked surprised for a minute and said, oh, well, we've decided to go in another direction and do this instead. And I said, well, I would have very much liked to know that, because I spent an enormous amount of time doing this. It's good work. And I said, and I feel like you essentially assigned me busy work. I've never not said my mind. You can imagine that. And I said, and I don't do that to my students. I do not assign my students busy work, not one day, not 1 minute. So don't do that to your teachers. That's very demoralizing. Or to your, lower level administrators. That's very demoralizing. Do not waste their time. I like these ideas as well that we've done in the past. Help your teachers make room for events within the school day on a regular basis that allow for classes, grade levels, or divisions of students to have fun together with their teachers and administrators. Teachers don't want to feel like in order to get to know their students, they have to, kind of bump curricular things out of the way. But if you've scheduled things in so that they can really get to know those kids beyond what they're doing in their classrooms, they're usually very appreciative of that. And then respond quickly and well to behavior or other problems that warrant an administrative response. And these are, again, the most important free supports. And I thought of this as well, but then the research supported it. Support your teachers in the face of parents or colleagues' criticism. Assume the best until proven otherwise. Have your teachers' backs. Support your teachers' decisions. The heavy presumption should always be that your teachers acted appropriately in the moment because you weren't there. So give them that presumption. And if later you find out they didn't, then you can deal with that. But, I always try to tell my people that I worked with on my administrative team, if I'm not there, maybe I'm at a director's meeting when we used to have these in person, and you make a decision, I will absolutely back that up, even if it's not the decision I would have made. Do that for your teachers too. And then figure out if things need to be adjusted, if that teacher needs training, because, maybe once you've heard everything, you realize they really did make a good decision there. So these are the best supports that cost money. And you may not be able to implement them with as much speed or ease as the free ones. And even the free ones, of course, do cost you in terms of time and intention and that sort of thing. So pay your teachers a decent stipend for extra work they take on at your request. If they're a committee chair, the Hope Squad advisor, student government advisor, baseball coach, whatever, pay them something. I don't know what it would be for your school, but make them feel like you're acknowledging. Usually it's a small price to pay for the lift that they get from your acknowledgement that they are spending time and effort doing this, instead of just sort of adding it to everything else they're doing. Or you can actually include it as part of their job. It has a percent FTE equivalent, so that you're paying them as part of their salary to do that. That is very affirming for a teacher. Some other things that cost money but are very effective for supporting teachers: pay teachers for work or PD that they do in the summer. Like if you require, some kind of a math workshop for your lower school teachers and you brought in an expert for that, don't just add it to extra days on that year's agreement. Think of paying them even just $100 a day. I mean, you pay your subs that at least acknowledges their time and effort, and you also pay for the materials. It's very, very affirming as well for your teachers and very supportive to make your salary schedule transparent and make sure teachers are being paid according to it. That might be something you have to do over a period of time, like 3 years. You might be way off of anything that's even remotely close to an average of the districts around you. And most of us can't pay what, especially if we're around expensive districts, we can't really pay what the districts around us are paying. But there are some advantages to working at a charter that at least for the teachers who choose that, they feel that way usually. But if your salaries are super low, at some point that advantage just simply doesn't work to your advantage. And so what you want to do is make sure that it's at least competitive with the districts. It's getting close. It might not be 100% there, but it's a good chunk, and you have some decent benefits too. So make sure that you update that salary too. You're going to have people, because other districts will have been raising their salaries, and you sometimes can't get a new teacher because it's so competitive at times, particularly in math and science, without paying them quite a bit. And then you look back and your teacher who's been there for 10 years at your institution is getting less than that, even though she has more experience, she's really great, and she's been committed to your institution for a decade. It's your job to make that more transparent and fair. As charters, we can get rid of teachers that aren't good. So the assumption is if you're hiring them, it's because you want them and they're worth the pay of that is reflected on your salary schedule. These are some moderately expensive but effective supports. Consider a more generous PTO policy. Now that's expensive in that if your teachers take time off, you're paying a sub, and I understand that. But your teachers need time off, and they do better work when they can take care of themselves and they have better well-being, or when they don't have to worry if they need to take a little more time for a funeral or some other thing. And in addition to generous PTO, you might even consider inserting a more generous bereavement or hardship policy that would allow you to, for instance, even help your hourly workers when especially you consider that if those workers actually have a hardship or a bereavement, they might, and you don't pay them for a week while they're taking care of this, they might actually not be able to eat or pay rent. And so consider, and here's the thing about that, your other employees are watching. They're watching to see the way you treat people, and not just other salaried employees, but all the people that make up your school. So consider adjusting resources and personnel so that teachers have more preparation and or collaboration time within the school day. I know that our school made a real commitment to that a number of years ago, using specialists in some areas and really working hard to get the schedule right so that even during the school day, our elementary teams had collaborative time. That is not an easy thing to get done, but it's been a great thing. And then if you're ensuring that your teachers have more flexibility when their formal job assignments are done in the afternoon, they often can sneak in a little time to collaborate there too, but it's on their own schedule. It's when the team decides to do it. And here are some best practice things that also do require some resources. It's really annoying when you're a teacher if you can't find, whiteboard markers or whatever it is that you use at your school, paper, whatever it is. We all kind of have maybe some blends of digital and sort of traditional kinds of learning. Make sure that you've got a lot of supplies on hand, because sometimes teachers aren't the best at asking you to order them, right? They're busy and they forget and they didn't realize they were running out. And then provide the best resources possible for curriculum pedagogy and supportive classroom environments. Maps, if your teachers need maps, if they're whatever, if they need document cameras, find a way to get that to them, depending on their subjects and the nature of the courses they teach. And then, of course, encourage growth. And I would suggest you do that, not just as whole faculty, but also try to figure out a way that you can give each of your teachers a kind of individualized professional development. There are ways to do that through micro-credentials or through running your professional development with very specific types of strands that maybe even target teachers at different levels or teachers in different in teaching different subjects or different groups of students, that early reading group versus the older elementary and so on. So try to make that individualized. Here are two things I think you should never do if you're going to try to support teachers. Don't tell your teachers to set boundaries between work and home, and then fail to create workloads that allow teachers to establish that balance. I don't know if there's anything that personally made me angrier when I was kind of in that first year to 15 year, because now I've taught, for nearly 4 decades, but I don't think there's anything that just made me like almost want to become inappropriately violent than that right there. That seems very disingenuous to say that to your teachers. Oh, you really need to make a boundary between home and work. Well, I've got, 5 preps, 200 students. You've asked me to be a Hope Squad advisor and such. So how am I supposed to will you be all right with my level of performance if I set that boundary? And you have to ask yourself that as a leader. And if you wouldn't be really, you need to change that workload for that teacher or change your expectation. So make that something that teachers can actually do instead of just kind of one of those, altruistic sorts of, hypothetical sayings that sound really good that they really can't adjust to. And then don't hire a new or inexperienced teacher at a higher salary than an effective teacher who's committed to your school for years. And we talked about that. Now, I know that you've been doing a lot for your particular training. And so what I'd like to do is just open it up to a little bit of a discussion. And Marie has always been good to send around a PowerPoint. There are about, 15 or 20 more slides on there that give some very good, in my opinion, some very good suggestions about how you might support your teachers within the categories we talked about. And for instance, one example is, just to give you a little preview of what's on the rest of the slides, would be something like actually going down. Don't ever send an email to your teacher that says, hey, could we meet for a minute after school? Go down and with a big smile on your face, say, I really think you've done such a good job with a tough class, especially these last few weeks. Just wanted to grab you and tell you that. If you want to talk to me about it, come after school. I'd like to really let you know how appreciative I am. Teachers don't like to get an email that says that you want to meet. They get scared and worried, and it's distracting. And they love for you to be present in their space and appreciative of their space and see that they're doing a good job. You can do so much by just literally walking the halls of your school and being available, even though some of the things I've listed actually are meaningful, long-term systemic things you can do. some of these smaller things really help in trying to establish some of those systemic things. But I would like to, I'd like to end by 3. It's been a long day for you, and many of you have after school activities. And as I said, Marie's good to send around PowerPoints and let people even administratively talk about it as a team using this kind of PowerPoint and this kind of resource. So here on this Zoom, what are some of the things that you have found? Either you're having trouble supporting your teachers in certain areas and you'd love to, tap into this group and hear their ideas, or you are doing a good job in some area that you'd like to share with others. So just go ahead, and I can't even see all 42 of you on here. So go ahead and just unmute yourself and ask and comment.
Hey, Cindy, I'll jump in here while I've got something on my mind. And this was recommended to me by one of my admin colleagues just recently, just in the last couple of weeks. And I feel like I've been in this work for a lot of years, but I'm always learning new things about how to, how to work with people, how to encourage people and get the best, sort of their best version of themselves each day. So, you mentioned an open door policy, and I've always felt like I've had that. Physically speaking, my office door is almost always open. But I think in a new, more virtual world where time is tight, having that sort of open door extend to the email conversations and that sort of thing has been really important. But I found what teachers need is a kind of a regular invitation to engage in conversations that might be on their mind, but it either may have not reached the level where they want to, make the effort to come up and talk about it or send an email. But when they get that invitation, it's easy to reply to that in the moment. It's like, oh, this has been on my mind. I want to share it now. So I've been trying to do just a weekly sort of invitation to the staff to say, hey, how's your week gone? Are there concerns that are kind of on your mind right now that you'd like to share? And then it gives me sort of a task list for the next week, right? Or the next weeks. Sometimes it's not an easy, quick solution, but at least I think offering that on a regular basis is that extra encouragement that people sometimes need just to share, concerns or thoughts about what's going on around the school.
That's a great idea. Anybody else? This is a good group of people to ask. I think you've got about 40 people on, all experienced to some degree or another. If you're having trouble supporting your teachers, if you're having a really good, if you have a good idea that's going very well, or you've noticed a big difference, it's not rocket science, right? But we have to make an intentional effort to implement one of those things that was on my list. It has to be very intentional. Go ahead, whoever's unmuting.
I will share a little something. This is Carrie Ann from Moab Charter. I decided this year that instead of just having the board evaluate me, that when I do my staff evaluations, that I would also give them a chance to evaluate me. And so I've been receiving lots of feedback, constructive, supportive, as well as, things that I can improve upon. And it's been really great to allow them the opportunity to say, hey, you know what? I would really love it if you would just do this. So that's been something that's been really fun for our staff this year.
It's a great idea. And in fact, I know that some boards actually include that as part of their executive director evaluation. So, and make sure that teachers have an opportunity to give comments as well as kind of rate different qualities in their leader. And that's very helpful. It's painful at times to have the honest feedback, but it's really helpful. So thanks, Carrie Ann. That's really good stuff.
Hi,
Go
Cindy.
ahead,
This is
jump in.
Stacy.
Stacy, yes.
Sorry, my camera's not working, so I can't turn it on. But I'm not a director now, but I was for 7 years. And something I did for staff around Christmas time is I would get them a sub for a half day, and I would let them take off for a half day to go Christmas shopping or wrap presents or do anything to get ready for the holidays. And when I would do evaluations for them at the end of the year, I always had a section like, what went really well this year? What did you appreciate the most? And almost every single time they would mention that holiday leave. And it wasn't a full day. It was just a half day. It wasn't too big of an ordeal on my end to arrange the subs. I'd have a full day sub that would cover 2 teachers. morning and afternoon. So there's an idea if you want one that's relatively inexpensive and teachers really enjoyed it.
It's a great idea, and it kind of goes along with just having a little bit of generous PTO, or at least considering your teachers. And I know that as a full-time teacher, I would sometimes have an inability to even contact a business that was only open during work hours, because as any of you know who have taught or who have that on your mind, you don't really have a break between classes, and you don't really have a break at lunch. You're usually tutoring students. When one class is leaving, one is usually coming on right on top of the other class, and you'll have a few prep periods in the week, but sometimes those are even taken by students or other needs. It's hard sometimes even just to make a call to a bank, or, we do a lot online now, but think about how circumscribed your teacher's days are. And so something like what Stacy provided, or offering a little bit more PTO so that people can take it when they're actually well and just need to address personal concerns, is a really great way to make somebody feel like a professional and feel very valued. Please jump in.
Another thing, Cindy, we've been trying to do is we have our PD days set aside for our school, and we always want to make sure that we have some group and grade level, PDs, some strands where people can get together with a group of people and do some professional development. But we also always on those days like to provide them at least a couple of hours, 3 hours maybe if we can, of independent time to prepare and research and catch up and do the things they need to do within the framework of a professional development day. So I feel like that's been really helpful, where the morning's devoted to the more heavy lifting part, and the afternoon is available to them as teams or individuals to take care of the work they need to do.
That's such a great idea. And I know personally that some of those teachers have put together project-based units or interdisciplinary units, or, done their whole scope and sequence for the next, term at times, revamping priority standards with that time. So that's a great idea too, is to not micromanage every bit of a professional development day when each grade level or team or individual might have different professional development needs, kind of like that individualized professional development what we talked about. That's just such an excellent thing. And it makes you feel like a professional. When somebody's not telling you what to do every minute, it's because they trust you to manage yourself as a professional. It's a very powerful message. Jump in if you've got other ideas or even questions. Marie, I think that's a wrap. I'm going to send you my PowerPoint, which is twice as long as the presentation. Hopefully will help some of the administrative teams to think of ways that next year can be better for teachers. We are in the midst of a teacher crisis that is only based on the numbers going forward. That is to say, the number of individuals in teacher preparation programs. And of course, we capture some with these non-traditional, but they have declined down in some universities into the single digits, okay? Where they used to be at 33% sometimes of our graduating classes in college. And we also have teachers leaving the field in greater percentages than ever. So supporting your teachers must be a priority. Good luck to you all, and we'll see you another time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vice Chair Phillips. We appreciate the thoughts and the excellent presentation. And as she said, we will get that sent out to you as well. That is a wrap for us as well. So thank you for being here today. I will go ahead and stop our recording.